David pulled his black sedan into the gravel driveway and stared at the old house. 3 months had passed since Grandma Rose died, and he still couldn't bring himself to think of this place as anything other than Grandma's house. The white paint was peeling on the shutters, and the front porch creaked under his feet as he walked up the steps. He'd been putting this off for weeks. His assistant had called him twice this morning about the quarterly board meeting, but David knew he couldn't delay this any longer. The house had to be cleared out and put on the market. Grandma Rose had left it to him, and keeping it wasn't practical. He lived in a modern downtown apartment, and his work kept him traveling constantly. The key turned easily in the old lock. Inside, everything looked exactly the same. The floral wallpaper his grandmother had loved, the ancient refrigerator humming in the kitchen, even the smell of lavender and old books. David loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves. This was going to take all weekend. He started in the living room, sorting through photo albums and china cabinets. Most of it would go to charity. Some of the antiques might be worth something. By afternoon, he'd made good progress on the first floor. The real challenge would be the attic. The narrow stairs groaned under his weight as he climbed up with a flashlight. The attic was cramped and hot, filled with decades of stored memories. Cardboard boxes labeled in his grandmother's careful handwriting lined the walls. Christmas decorations, 1987. David's school papers. Rose's wedding dress. David smiled despite himself. Grandma Rose had never thrown anything away. He opened the nearest box and found his old report cards from elementary school. She'd kept every single one, even the ones where Mrs. Peterson had written notes about him talking too much in class. He was reaching for another box when he heard something strange. A soft sound, almost like whimpering. David froze and listened carefully. The old house made plenty of noises. Settling wood, pipes creaking, wind through loose shingles. But this was different. This sounded almost human. There it was again. Definitely coming from the far corner of the attic, near the old steamer trunk his grandmother had brought from Ireland decades ago. David grabbed his flashlight and moved carefully between the boxes. The sound was clearer now. Someone was crying, very quietly, like they were trying not to be heard. "Hello?" David called out softly. "Is someone up here?" The crying stopped immediately. David's heart was pounding now. His first thought was that someone had broken in. Maybe a homeless person looking for shelter, but something about the crying didn't sound like an adult. It sounded small, young. He approached the trunk slowly. It was an old-fashioned steamer trunk, the kind people used to take on ocean voyages. Grandma Rose had used it to store winter blankets. The lid was slightly open, and David could see that someone had been eating crackers inside it. There were crumbs scattered around and an empty water bottle. "Hey," David said gently, kneeling down beside the trunk. "I'm not going to hurt you. Are you okay in there?" A small voice whispered back so quietly he almost missed it. "Please." "She can't breathe." David's blood ran cold. "She? Was there someone else in there?"
"Can you come out?" he asked.
"I want to help you." "She can't breathe good," the voice said again, and now David realized the child was talking about herself. The voice was wheezy and strained. David carefully lifted the trunk lid. Inside, curled up like a frightened animal, was a little girl. She looked to be about 7 years old, with tangled brown hair and dirt on her face. Her breathing was labored and wheezy. She looked up at him with wide, terrified eyes. "Oh my God," David breathed. "Sweetheart, what are you doing in there?" The girl tried to shrink further back into the trunk. She was wearing a pink t-shirt and jeans that looked like they hadn't been changed in days. David could see that she was struggling to breathe properly. "Do you have asthma?" he asked gently. The girl nodded, still watching him with those huge, scared eyes. "Okay, first thing we need to do is get you some fresh air," David said. He was trying to keep his voice calm, but inside he was panicking. How long had this child been up here? Who was she? Where were her parents? "I'm going to help you out of there, okay? Nice and slow." The girl didn't resist as David carefully lifted her out of the trunk. She was so small and light it broke his heart. As soon as she was in his arms, he could feel how her whole body was shaking. "When did you last use your inhaler?" he asked. "Don't have one," she whispered. David's mind was racing. This child was having an asthma attack and she didn't have medication. He needed to get her help immediately. "What's your name, sweetheart?" he asked, carrying her toward the attic stairs. "Lily," she said so quietly he almost missed it. "Okay, Lily. I'm David." I'm going to take you downstairs where there's better air and then I'm going to call for help. Is that okay? She nodded against his shoulder. David carried her down to the living room and set her gently on the couch. Her breathing was getting worse and her lips looked a little blue around the edges. This was serious. He pulled out his phone and dialed 911. 911. What's your emergency? I need an ambulance, David said, trying to keep his voice steady. I found a little girl in my house. She's about 7 years old and she's having trouble breathing. She says she has asthma but no inhaler. Sir, what's your address? David gave them his grandmother's address and answered their questions as best he could. No, he didn't know the child. Yes, she seemed to have been there for some time. No, he had no idea where her parents were. While they waited for the ambulance, David sat beside Lily on the couch. She was still wheezing, but being in the cooler, less dusty air downstairs seemed to be helping a little. Lily, can you tell me how you got here? He asked. She looked at him for a long moment as if trying to decide whether to trust him. She was scared, Lily said finally, still referring to herself in the third person. The people. They said bad things. She heard them, so she ran away. David's heart sank. This child had run away from somewhere and ended up hiding in his grandmother's attic. How long had she been there? How had she gotten in? In the distance, he could hear sirens getting closer. The ambulance pulled up just as Lily's breathing got worse. 2 paramedics rushed in with their equipment, and David quickly stepped back to give them room to work. When did this start? Asked the older paramedic. A woman with kind eyes and gray hair pulled back in a ponytail. I found her about 15 minutes ago, David explained. She was hiding in my attic. She says she has asthma but no inhaler. The paramedic knelt down beside Lily. Hey, sweetheart, I'm Nancy. Can you tell me how you're feeling? Lily looked scared but nodded. She can't breathe good, she whispered. Nancy glanced at David with a concerned expression. Kids who talked about themselves in third person had usually been through trauma. She'd seen it before. Okay, honey, I'm going to give you some medicine to help you breathe better, Nancy said gently. She placed a small mask over Lily's face. Just breathe normally. This is going to help. Within minutes, the medication started working. Lily's breathing became less labored, and the blue tinge around her lips began to fade. That's much better, Nancy said with a smile. You're going to be just fine. The second paramedic, a younger man named Tom, was checking Lily's vital signs. Looks like she's been without food for a while, he said quietly to David. When did you say you found her? Just now. But it looks like she's been up there for days. There were cracker crumbs and an empty water bottle. Nancy frowned. We need to take her to the hospital for a full checkup. And we'll have to call the police. Any child found in these circumstances? Of course, David said quickly. Whatever she needs. As if on cue, a police car pulled into the driveway. David watched through the window as a female officer got out and walked toward the house. The officer knocked and came inside. She was tall and athletic-looking, with short blonde hair and a no-nonsense attitude. But her expression softened when she saw Lily. I'm Officer Johnson, she said to David. You're the one who called this in? Yes, I'm David Chen. This is my grandmother's house. I was cleaning it out and found her hiding in the attic. Officer Johnson pulled out a small notebook. And the child? She says her name is Lily, that's all I know. Officer Johnson approached the couch carefully. Lily was still wearing the oxygen mask, but her eyes were alert and watching everything. Hi, Lily, the officer said in a gentle voice. I'm Officer Johnson, but you can call me Kate. Are you feeling better? Lily nodded but didn't speak. Lily, can you tell me where you live? Where your family is? Lily's eyes filled with tears. She shook her head. She mentioned running away. David offered. Said she was scared of some people who said bad things. Officer Johnson made notes. Lily, did you run away from home? Lily looked down at her hands. Finally, she whispered. Not home. The house where they put her. A foster home? Officer Johnson asked. Lily nodded. David felt his heart sink. This little girl was in the foster care system, which meant she'd probably already been through more trauma than any child should face. Nancy finished checking Lily's breathing. She's stable now, but I want to take her to the hospital for observation. She's dehydrated and malnourished. Of course, Officer Johnson said. I'll follow you there. I need to make some calls and see if we have any missing person reports. As the paramedics prepared to transport Lily T. Dye to the ambulance, she grabbed David's hand. Please, she whispered. She's scared. David squeezed her small hand gently. It's going to be okay. These people are going to take good care of you. Will you come too? Lily asked. David looked at Officer Johnson, who nodded. You can follow us to the hospital, she said. At Riverside General Hospital, Lily was taken into the emergency room while David waited in the hallway with Officer Johnson. She was on her phone, making calls and taking notes. Found her, Officer Johnson said after hanging up. Lily Rodriguez, age 7. Reported missing 3 days ago from a foster home in Millbrook. That's about 30 miles from here. 3 days, David repeated. She's been hiding in that attic for 3 days? Looks that way. The foster parents, Mr. and Mrs. Patterson, said she disappeared sometime Tuesday night. They thought she might have gone to a friend's house, but when she didn't come back. What kind of foster parents don't notice a 7-year-old is missing for 3 days? David asked, trying to keep the anger out of his voice. Officer Johnson sighed. Look, I can't go into details about the case, but the Pattersons have 6 foster kids right now. The system is overwhelmed. Sometimes things fall through the cracks. A doctor came out of the emergency room. Are you here for Lily Rodriguez? Yes, David and Officer Johnson said at the same time. She's doing much better. The breathing treatment worked well, and we've got her on an IV to help with the dehydration. She's asking for... The doctor checked his chart. David? That's me, David said. She wants to know if you're still here. Would you like to see her? David followed the doctor into the emergency room. Lily was lying in a hospital bed that looked way too big for her small frame. She had an IV in her arm and was eating Jell-O from a plastic cup. Hi, Lily, David said softly. How are you feeling? Better, she said. Her voice was stronger now. The red Jell-O tastes good. I'm glad. David sat down in the chair next to her bed. Lily, can you tell me why you ran away? Lily looked down at her Jell-O. For a moment, David didn't think she was going to answer. She heard them talking, Lily said finally. The people. They said she was too much trouble. They said they were going to send her away to a place with lots of other kids. A place where she'd never get a real family. David's chest tightened. The Pattersons said that? They didn't know she was listening. But she heard. She got scared and ran away. She just wanted to find somewhere safe. How did you end up at my grandmother's house? She was walking and walking. It was dark and she was scared. She saw the house and it looked empty. So she went around back. There was a window that was open a little bit. She climbed in. David thought about the basement window that had been giving his grandmother trouble for years. The latch was broken, and it didn't close properly. She found crackers in the kitchen and water from the bathroom. Then when she heard your car, she got scared and hid in the big box upstairs. Officer Johnson appeared in the doorway. Sorry to interrupt, but I have an update. I spoke with Child Services. They're sending someone over to talk with Lily. What happens next? David asked. Well, normally she'd go back to her foster placement, but given the circumstances... Officer Johnson paused. Let's just say they're reviewing the situation. She doesn't want to go back there, David said. I know, and that's going to be taken into consideration. A woman in a business suit walked into the room. Hello, I'm Carol Martinez from Child Protective Services. I'm here to talk with Lily. Lily immediately grabbed David's hand when she saw the woman. Her breathing started to get faster. It's okay, David said quietly. She's here to help you. But as Ms. Martinez began asking questions, David couldn't shake the feeling that nothing about the situation was okay. This little girl had been so desperate to avoid being sent away that she'd risked her life hiding in a stranger's attic, and now they were probably going to put her right back into the system that had failed her in the first place. Ms. Martinez sat down in the chair across from Lily's hospital bed and opened her folder. She had the tired look of someone who'd been doing this job for too long and had seen too much. Lily, I'm going to ask you some questions, okay? She said in a professional tone that was trying to be kind but somehow wasn't. Can you tell me why you left the Patterson home? Lily's grip on David's hand tightened. She didn't answer. Lily, you scared a lot of people when you disappeared. The Pattersons were worried about you. No, they weren't, Lily said quietly but with surprising firmness. They were happy she was gone. Ms. Martinez made a note. What makes you think that? She heard them. They said she was too much work. They said they couldn't handle her breathing problems and her nightmares. They wanted to send her somewhere else. David felt anger rising in his chest. How could adults talk about a 7-year-old like she was a burden? Sometimes adults say things when they're frustrated that they don't really mean. Ms. Martinez said. They meant it, Lily said simply. Ms. Martinez spent another 20 minutes asking questions. Where had Lily slept? What had she eaten? How did she feel now? Through it all, Lily answered in short sentences, never letting go of David's hand. Finally, Ms. Martinez closed her folder. Well, Lily, the good news is you're safe now. We're going to find you a nice place to stay while we figure out what's best for you. Can she stay with David? Lily asked suddenly. Ms. Martinez looked surprised. Sweetie, that's not how it works. Mr. Chen isn't approved as a foster parent. You need to stay with people who are trained to take care of children. But David found her. David helped her breathe. David is nice. David felt something twist in his chest. No one had ever defended him like this 7-year-old was doing right now. I know he's nice, Ms. Martinez said patiently. But there are rules we have to follow. I'm going to make some calls and find you a good temporary placement for tonight. After Ms. Martinez left, David sat quietly with Lily. She was picking at her dinner tray, not really eating. Are you okay? He asked. She doesn't want to go to another house with strangers, Lily said. I know, but maybe this time will be different. Maybe you'll find a family who really wants you. Lily looked at him with those big, serious eyes. David? Yeah? Why did you help her? You don't even know her. David thought about that. Why had he helped? It would have been easier to just call the police and let them handle it. He had a company to run, meetings to attend, a life that didn't include complicated situations like this. Because you needed help, he said finally. And when someone needs help, you help them. That's just what you do. Lily nodded like this made perfect sense to her. David's phone buzzed. It was his assistant, Rebecca. I'm sorry to bother you, David, but the Peterson account is having issues with their proposal. They want to meet first thing Monday morning and you haven't reviewed the contract yet. David looked at Lily, who was watching him curiously. Can you reschedule it for Tuesday? He asked. Tuesday? David, this is a $15 million deal. They're not going to wait. David stepped into the hallway. Rebecca, something important came up. Family emergency. Can you handle the Peterson meeting or get Mike to do it? There was a pause. David, are you okay? You've never missed a client meeting for a family emergency. What's going on? How could he explain this? That he'd found a little girl hiding in his grandmother's attic and now he couldn't seem to walk away from her situation. It's complicated, just make it work, okay? When he came back into the room, Lily was drawing on the back of a paper menu with a crayon one of the nurses had given her. What are you drawing? David asked. A house, Lily said, with a big tree and flowers, and a dog. That's beautiful. Is that a house you lived in before? Lily shook her head. It's a house she wants to live in someday, with a family that wants to keep her. David's throat felt tight. I bet you'll have a house like that someday. Do you have a house like that? Lily asked. I have an apartment in the city. No yard, no dog, just me. Don't you get lonely? It was such a simple question, but it hit David harder than any business negotiation ever had. Did he get lonely? He'd been so busy building his company, making deals, climbing the corporate ladder, that he'd never stopped to think about it. Sometimes, he admitted. Ms. Martinez came back a few hours later with news. Good news, Lily, I found you a place to stay tonight. The Williams family has agreed to take you temporarily. Are they nice? Lily asked. They're very nice. They have 2 other foster children, both girls about your age. You'll have friends to play with. Lily didn't look convinced. What if they don't like her? They will, Ms. Martinez said with the kind of forced confidence that adults use when they're not really sure about something. David felt like he should say something, do something. But what? He wasn't family. He had no legal right to interfere. He was just a businessman who happened to find a scared little girl in his grandmother's house. Can David visit her? Lily asked. Ms. Martinez looked uncomfortable. Well, that would be unusual. Typically only family members. Please. Lily's voice was so small and hopeful. David found himself speaking before he could stop himself. I'd like to visit, if that's allowed. Ms. Martinez looked at him carefully. Mr. Chen, can I speak with you privately for a moment? They stepped into the hallway. Sir, I appreciate your concern for Lily, but I have to ask, what exactly is your interest in this Cass? I don't know, David said honestly. I found her, she was scared, and I want to make sure she's okay. Are you married? Do you have children? No to both. Ms. Martinez nodded. Look, I can see you care about her, and that's nice. But getting too involved in a foster child's case when you're not qualified as a guardian can actually make things harder for the child. It gives them false hope. False hope for what? For a placement that can't happen. You're a single man with no experience with children. Even if you wanted to pursue guardianship, the process takes months, sometimes years. And there's no guarantee you'd be approved. David felt frustration building. So what, we just abandon her to bounce between foster homes? We do our best to find her a permanent, loving family. That's how the system works. But David had spent enough years in business to recognize when a system wasn't working. And everything about Lily's situation screamed that the system was failing her. That night, after Lily had been taken to the Williams house, David sat in his car in the hospital parking lot. His phone had been buzzing all evening with work calls and emails. The Peterson deal was falling apart. His investors were asking questions about his absence from the office. He had a choice to make. Go back to his life, his company, his comfortable routine, or get involved in something complicated and messy and probably heartbreaking. He thought about Lily asking if he got lonely. He thought about her drawing a house with a family she wanted. He thought about the fact that in 34 years of life, no one had ever held his hand and trusted him the way that little girl had. David started his car and drove home. But he knew that whatever happened next, walking away wasn't really an option anymore. David stood outside the Williams house holding a small bag from the bookstore. It had been 3 days since Lily was placed here, and Ms. Martinez had finally agreed to let him visit. The house was a modest, 2-story home in a quiet neighborhood, with toys scattered across the front yard. Mrs. Williams answered the door. She was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes but a tired expression that David was starting to recognize in people who worked with foster children. "Mr. Chen?" she said. "I'm Janet Williams." "Come in." The house was busy and loud. 2 other girls were playing in the living room, and David could hear a TV somewhere upstairs. It felt chaotic but warm, like a real family home. "Lily's been asking about you since she got here," Mrs. Williams said as she led him through the house. "She's in the kitchen doing homework." David found Lily sitting at a small table working on math problems. She looked up when she heard his voice and her whole face lit up. "David, you came." "Of course I came," he said, sitting down across from her. "I promised I would. How are you feeling?" "Better. Mrs. Williams has medicine for when she can't breathe good, and the food here is really good." David noticed that Lily still talked about herself in third person when she was nervous or emotional. He was learning to read the signs. "What kind of math are you working on?" he asked, looking at her worksheet. "Addition and subtraction." "She's not very good at it." David looked at the problems. They were actually pretty advanced for a 7-year-old. "Can I help you with this one?" For the next hour, David helped Lily with her homework. He was surprised by how quick she was to pick up new concepts. She just needed someone to explain things patiently. "You're really smart, you know that?" he told her. Lily smiled shyly. Her teacher at the last school said she was good at numbers, but then she had to leave that school. "How many schools have you been to?" Lily had to think about it, counting on her fingers. 5, maybe 6. She can't remember all of them. David's heart hurt thinking about this little girl moving from school to school, never getting to make lasting friendships or feel settled anywhere. "What do you like to do besides math?" he asked. "She likes to draw. And she likes stories about animals. And she wishes she could have a pet, but foster kids can't have pets." "What kind of pet would you want?" "A dog. A small one that could sleep on her bed and wouldn't be scared of thunderstorms." David pulled out the bag he'd brought. "I brought you something." Lily's eyes went wide as she opened it. Inside was a book about a girl who rescues stray dogs and a small sketchbook with colored pencils. "For me," she whispered. "For you. The lady at the bookstore said this was the best book for kids who love animals. And I thought you might like to draw in this." Lily hugged the book to her chest. "Thank you, David. She loves it." Mrs. Williams appeared in the doorway. "Lily, time to get ready for bed soon." "Can David read her one story?" Lily asked. "Of course, honey." They went up to Lily's room, which she shared with another foster girl named Amy. It was a small room with twin beds and not much else. But Mrs. Williams had tried to make it cheerful with colorful bedspreads and some stuffed animals. David read 2 chapters of the book, and Lily fell asleep halfway through the second one. He sat there for a moment watching her sleep peacefully, something he'd learned she didn't do very often. Downstairs, Mrs. Williams made him a cup of coffee. "She's been through a lot," she said quietly. "The nightmares are getting better, but she still wakes up scared sometimes." What happens next for her? David asked Mrs. Williams' side. They're looking for a permanent placement, but it's hard with older kids, especially ones with medical needs. Most families want babies or toddlers. What about the Pattersons? The foster family she ran away from? They've decided not to take her back. They said her medical needs are too much for them to handle with their other placements. David felt anger rising again. So she gets punished because she has asthma? It's not supposed to work that way, but Mrs. Williams shrugged. The system is overwhelmed. There aren't enough good homes for all the kids who need them. David drove home that night thinking about what Mrs. Williams had said. The next morning, instead of going straight to his office, he made a different stop. The Department of Child Services was located in a gray government building downtown. David had to wait 2 hours to speak with someone, but finally, a caseworker named Mr. Thompson agreed to meet with him. I want to know what it would take for me to become Lily's guardian, David said directly. Mr. Thompson looked surprised. Mr. Chen, well, it's complicated. Are you a relative? No, I'm the person who found her. I see. Well, first you'd need to be approved as a foster parent. That process takes several months. Background checks, home studies, training classes, interviews. Then if Lily's case goes to adoption, you'd have to compete with other approved families. Compete? The court tries to place children with families that best meet their needs. Married couples are typically preferred, families with experience raising children, people who've been through extensive training. What if the child has a preference? The child's wishes are considered, but they're not the deciding factor. The court makes decisions based on what they believe is in the child's best interest. David left the meeting with a folder full of paperwork and a sinking feeling in his stomach. The process was going to be long, expensive, and there was no guarantee he'd succeed. His phone rang as he got to his car. It was his business partner, Mike. David, where have you been? The Peterson deal completely fell apart. They signed with our competitor yesterday. That's $15 million in revenue we just lost. David closed his eyes. He'd been so focused on Lily that he'd let his biggest client slip away. And there's something else, Mike continued. The board is asking questions. They want to know why you've been absent so much lately. Some of them are starting to wonder if you're still committed to the company. David had built this company from nothing. For 10 years, it had been his whole life. And now, in just a few days, it was starting to fall apart because he couldn't stop thinking about a 7-year-old girl who needed help. That evening, he visited Lily again. She showed him the pictures she'd drawn in her new sketchbook, dogs and houses and families holding hands. David? She said as he was getting ready to leave. Mrs. Williams said you might not be able to visit very much anymore because of your work. I'll visit as much as I can, he promised. She's scared you'll forget about her. Like other people did. David knelt down so he was at eye level with her. Lily, I will never forget about you. Even if I can't visit every day, you'll always be important to me. Okay? She nodded, but he could see the doubt in her eyes. How many adults had made promises to this little girl that they didn't keep? Over the next few weeks, David tried to balance everything. He attended the required foster parent training classes in the evenings. He met with lawyers about the legal process. He visited Lily twice a week, bringing books and helping with homework. But his business was suffering. He lost another client because he missed an important presentation. His investors were getting nervous. Mike pulled him aside after a board meeting. David, what's going on with you? This isn't like you. You're distracted, you're missing meetings, you're not focused on the company anymore. There's just some personal stuff I'm dealing with, David said. Personal stuff? David, you don't have personal stuff. You live and breathe this company. That's who you are. But as David drove to visit Lily that evening, he realized Mike was wrong. That wasn't who he was anymore. Or maybe it had never really been who he was supposed to be. He was starting to understand that some things were more important than business. Such deals and board meetings. Some things were worth risking everything for. 6 months later, David stood in a courtroom wearing his best suit, but his hands were shaking more than they ever had during any business presentation. Lily sat beside him in a new blue dress, swinging her legs nervously from the chair that was too big for her. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Monroe, the bailiff announced. The past 6 months had been the hardest of David's life. He'd completed all the foster parent training classes, sitting through sessions on childhood trauma, behavior management, and medical care. He'd had his background checked, his finances reviewed, and his home inspected 3 different times. He'd also lost 2 more major clients and had to sell his downtown apartment to buy a house with a yard in the suburbs. Mike had finally convinced the board to bring in another CEO to handle day-to-day operations while David sorted out his priorities. But through it all, Lily had been there. Every visit, every phone call, every small victory and setback. She'd started calling him by his name instead of referring to herself in third person when she talked about their plans together. That had been the moment David knew he was making the right choice. "Mr. Chen," Judge Monroe said, looking down at them from her bench, "I've reviewed your case thoroughly. This is an unusual situation." David's heart pounded. Unusual could go either way. It's rare to see someone with no previous experience with children successfully complete our foster parent program and petition for adoption within such a short time frame. David held his breath. However, the judge continued, "The reports from Lily's social worker, her teachers, and her therapist all indicate that this placement has been remarkably successful. Lily's grades have improved, her asthma is well managed, and she's shown significant emotional progress." Lily reached over and took David's hand. "Lily," Judge Monroe said gently, "you're 8 years old now, and you're old enough to have a say in this. Do you want Mr. Chen to be your permanent guardian?" "Yes," Lily said clearly without hesitation. "David is her dad now. She wants to stay with him forever." Judge Monroe smiled. "Very well, Mr. Chen, I'm granting your petition for guardianship and adoption. Congratulations, you're officially a father." David felt tears he didn't know he was holding back start to fall. Lily launched herself into his arms, and for the first time in months he felt like he could breathe properly. "We did it," she whispered in his ear. "We're a real family now." Outside the courthouse, David's lawyer shook his hand. "Congratulations, David, you got a great kid there." "I know," David said, watching Lily run around on the courthouse steps, her energy boundless now that the stress was over. "I'm the lucky one." Ms. Martinez appeared beside them. She'd been Lily's caseworker through the entire process, and despite their rocky start, she'd become one of David's strongest supporters. "You know," she said quietly, "in 15 years of doing this job, I've never seen a child change so much in such a short time. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." "I'm just trying to be what she needs," David said. "That's exactly what you're doing." That evening, they celebrated at Lily's favorite restaurant, a small pizza place where she could get extra cheese and David could work on his laptop if needed. Though lately he'd been leaving the laptop in the car more often. "So what do you want to do this weekend?" David asked as they shared a slice of chocolate cake. "Can we work on the house more?" Lily asked. Over the past few months, David had been renovating his grandmother's old house. Instead of selling it like he'd originally planned, he'd decided to turn it into their family home. It felt right somehow, taking the place where they'd first met and making it into something new and happy. "What room do you want to tackle next?" David asked. Lily grinned. "The attic." They'd been avoiding the attic, both of them knowing it needed to be dealt with but not quite ready to go back to where their story started. But now, with the adoption final, it felt like the right time. Saturday morning, they climbed the narrow stairs together. The attic looked different now. David had installed better lighting and cleaned out most of the old boxes. But the trunk was still there, sitting in the corner. "She used to be so scared up here," Lily said, walking over to touch the trunk. "She thought no one would ever find her." "But someone did find you," David said. "And now look where we are." Lily opened the trunk and peered inside. "It's just an old box now. Not scary anymore." "What do you think we should do with this room?" David asked. Lily looked around thoughtfully. "Can we make it into an art room? With big windows and lots of space for drawing?" "I think that's a perfect idea." They spent the morning measuring and planning. David ordered new windows for better light, and they picked out paint colors from samples at the hardware store. Lily wanted yellow walls because yellow is a happy color. "And we should keep the trunk," she decided. "But make it into something good, like a place to store art supplies." Over the next few weeks, they transformed the space together. David hired contractors for the major work, but he and Lily painted the walls themselves. She got more paint on herself than on the walls, but David didn't mind. He was learning that being a parent meant caring more about the memories you made than about having a perfect house. When they were finished, the attic was bright and cheerful, with skylights and windows that filled the space with natural light. The old trunk sat in the corner, now painted white and filled with art supplies, colored pencils, and sketch pads. "It's perfect," Lily said, spinning around in the middle of the room. She wants to draw a picture of it. She sat down at the small easel David had bought her and started sketching. David watched her work, amazed at how detailed and careful her drawings were. In this picture, she drew the attic as it was now, bright and welcoming, with herself and David sitting together at the art table. "David?" she said without looking up from her drawing. "Yeah? She wants to teach you something." "What's that?" Lily reached into the art supply trunk and pulled out a stack of colorful paper. "Origami. Mrs. Williams taught her how to make paper birds." For the next hour, Lily patiently taught David how to fold paper cranes. His first few attempts were disasters, lopsided and barely recognizable as birds. But Lily was a patient teacher, showing him each fold slowly and helping him when he got confused. "See," she said, holding up a perfect yellow crane. "It's not that hard. You just have to take your time and be careful with each step." David looked at his own crane, which was finally starting to look like an actual bird. "You're right. I think I was trying to rush it." "That's what she used to do," Lily said. "Rush everything because she was always scared she'd have to leave before she finished. But now she knows she has time. She can take as long as she wants because this is her home now." "That's right," David said softly. "This is your home, our home. And you never have to leave." They made dozens of paper cranes that afternoon, hanging them from the ceiling so they looked like they were flying around the bright room. As the sun set outside the new windows, David realized that somewhere along the way he'd stopped thinking of himself as a businessman who happened to be taking care of a child. He was a father now. That was his most important job. "David?" Lily said as they cleaned up the paper scraps. "Yeah?" She's happy now. Really, truly happy. David hugged her tight. "I'm happy too, kiddo." "I'm happy too." Outside, the old Victorian house settled into evening quiet. But inside, in the bright yellow room that had once been a place of fear and hiding, a new family was building something beautiful together, one careful fold at a time.